do you feel like your framework, in addition to the business creation element, is there another point in time in which you think that your framework and essentialism can really add value?
I mean, let's talk about specifically the decision-making around building an excellent essential team. Essentialism at the surface level is about, people read it like, oh, it's about time management, be more selective, what you spend your time on and what you don't. That's not how I think about it primarily, but I get that on the surface it sort of looks like that and sounds like that. What it really is a decision frame, right, as we've talked about. So therefore, and this is where I think its highest value is it can be applied to any type of decision making. So how would essentialism apply to building a team? I mean, there's a few things. One is, well, what kind of talent would you select? Do you bring in people who are pretty good? Oh my goodness, we have a need. There's a problem, and we need to throw somebody at that problem. That would be a non-essentialist approach to it. An essentialist would hold the discomfort of not having somebody in that role and prioritize finding the right person. So we might say the phrase like hire slow, fire fast.
Sure. But what you're saying is really identify what you really need in that role and hold out until you find that person.
Yes, I think that's right. And there's lots of examples of essentialists that have done this. But one that I love is the co-founders of Hexcel, I think is the company name. And when they interview people, they have a very particular approach to interviewing, which is that they feel that they know within 3 or 4 minutes of the interview whether it's the right person. But and I think a lot of people do feel that, but typically they feel then obliged to still spend the next half hour, whatever they've allotted to be with that person. And they don't do that. They literally just go, after like 3 or 4 minutes, they're like, okay, thank you for coming in. And they just move on to the next person until they find someone that they feel is like a definite yes. And then they'll spend 2 or 3 hours with them. That's an example of what it would look like. Another example is the managing director of Vitsu, which is he's such an interesting guy because he started this. Vitsu only sells products that were designed by Dieter Rams, who famously came up with the principle, or stated it this way, less but better. That he used that as a design principle in products for 35 years when he was at Braun. He was always trying to strip away all the non-essential clutter on the product design themselves. Well, Vitsu doesn't just sell the products that have been so carefully designed by Dieter. They've also taken it into the culture of their organization. So when I spoke to him, this was very early on while I was still writing Essentialism, when I spoke to him for the first time, and I mentioned the term essentialist as being sort of a working word I'd coined to try and express this way of leading. He was like, and he's not a presumptive guy at all, but he said, that's me. He said, I am an essentialist. I have spent 35 years as an essentialist. That's for real. So when he started to describe the culture and the processes that he's followed inside of his business, it was like really fascinating to me to see how far you could go with a single design principle, less but better. So when he came to hiring, how do they hire? Well, they have a whole process in place where they bring people in. They'll have them work for a full day without like an employee contract. Just come and work with us for a day. I remember one example. They had this person come in, worked with them the day that this was just putting up the shelving system. I mean,
sure. They want to see how
they want to see how he's doing. Yeah. Well, he was very competent all day long. He did all the things right. Everything is great. He's personable. At the end of the day, he threw his tools in the bag. That's it. That's the day. They then have an internal process where they evaluate somebody before hiring them. So they're all discussing, how was it? Well, he was great. We enjoyed him. He's nice. And then they came to this where he threw his tools in the bag. And they're like, oh, really? That's interesting, isn't it? And they keep talking about this. And they're like, yeah, we just couldn't hire someone that would throw the tools in the bag like that, It's just not who we are. And they didn't hire that person. And somebody listening to this could say, well, that's just ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous for them because they have named who they are and who they aren't so precisely that they know who's going to be a fit. They want people, and I don't mean like they're all, from a diversity point of view, it's not the same backgrounds and so on, but it's a cultural appreciation of a very particular way of deciding and working together. And so And so when they hire people, there's just these people stay forever. They've found their home. They know that they want to be there. They've learned other things like this, like they know that the type of person who's going to thrive at Vitsu is someone who used to play with Legos as a child, obsessively with Legos. They found
so you ask them about Legos in the past.
Ask them about Legos. So, and so on. So it's all. So that's now you asked me about teams, and I've gone entirely about just selecting people.
I think you give a good framework there again, which is that you're basically saying, really, it's essential to understand correctly who you are and who you are not, and apply that to your hiring decisions, and have go through basically an exercise as a team where you really distill down what that is before you make those investments.
I think so, because if you don't, what happens is that you actually set a lot of people up for failure.
Yeah.
And so what sounds like a little harsh with them, I think is actually principled and in the long run really kind.
Yeah. Firing people is not fun and is hard on the culture. And so, getting your team to really stick and to be the right fit is huge.
Yes, because if you hire the wrong person, somebody that isn't a good fit, and then don't change it, that too is so harsh on the culture.
Yeah.
So you set yourself up for one of two problems. You either then have to fire, which of course doesn't feel good for anyone involved, or you keep someone on the team that everyone is then limited by. And the research behind this is pretty strong, that if you have someone who's not a fit on the team and isn't working well on the team or is underperforming in some way, the rest of the team can actually not function, just cannot function as a peak performance team. And so when we think, oh, it's kind, keep them in there, give them a chance, keep going, we're actually limiting everybody involved. And
that's very interesting.
Yeah.